going on, people? Welcome to episode 32 of the Hip Hop Orchestra present, and I'm joined by an incredibly inspirational person, head of business development at the incredible charity UK Youth, Christina Watson. How are you?
I'm well, thank you, Georgio. How are you?
I'm not too bad, I think. It's been a while, hasn't it, since we caught up last, actually thinking about it.
It has, yeah. A couple of years, I reckon.
It has. It was at the Ministry of Sound, wasn't it, that we last caught up?
Yeah,
Yeah.
big event for young people at the Ministry of Sound. It was, it's pretty epic, actually.
It was. It was such a good event. But thank you once again for inviting us down to perform. It was such a good day. Thank you.
No, thank you for being part of it. It was
It's my pleasure.
amazing to have so many of the orchestra there.
I know, it's been a long time though, but how's things been with you since lockdown? Have you been okay?
Yeah, doing okay, thank you. Yeah, pretty grateful for for kind of a lot of things in my personal situation, and thankfully with UK Youth we've fingers crossed touch wood kind of been able to weather the storm in terms of kind of the stability of the organisation, and we've got most of our staff back from furlough now, so things are feeling just, I hasten to say, a little bit more normal. I think we're obviously nothing's going to be back to completely normal, but yeah, feeling kind of very grateful, to be honest.
Have you still been working from home this whole time as well, or have you been going in?
Yes, yeah. So most of us, we've got an office in London, and so it's not really been safe and comfortable for people to be there. So luckily, with UK Youth Work, I mean, we do direct delivery, but most of that is through kind of partners, local youth organisations. So actually, the majority of our work we can do from home.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we've been able to kind of adapt to that, and get people getting kind of digital savvy where they maybe were resistant to it before, which is never a bad thing.
I love to ask people how they've been finding Zoom actually this whole time, because it's like kind of like Marmite. I realize a lot of people there, they love it or hate it. How have you been finding it so far?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? Because it's such an enabler. It's allowing us to be able to continue to collaborate and work, and so I've got to be kind of thankful for that. The flip side, though, is just the amount of screen time. I personally find it really difficult. I can get to the end of the day and feel just like I've just looked at a screen and also looked at an image of myself all day, which is just I don't think very healthy. So I'm finding kind of more than ever I need to shut the laptop and just get into nature, look at green things rather than kind of grey screens. It's a bit much for the brain.
Yeah, I won't keep you long then. I'll do a quick one today, so don't worry.
No, I'm happy. This one's different.
Thank you. Well, before we get into things and your work with UK Youth, for those that might not know about UK Youth, who exactly are they and what do they do?
Sure, yeah. So UK Youth, we're a leading national charity, and we exist really to support young people to ensure that they're really equipped to thrive in life, and they're really empowered as well to contribute to their own lives, but also to society. That's our kind of big vision. And we sit at the heart of what we refer to as a movement of youth organisations. So about kind of 6,000 at the last count, based all across the UK, so with our nation partners in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales as well. And so really together we work to ensure that there are really high quality youth services in every community, opportunities for young people to connect. A lot of that is through youth work, so through the youth work approach, which we really believe kind of that relationship can be a real kind of a really important one in a lot of young people's lives, particularly if they are less engaged in school or if they've been outside of the formal education system. Often that youth work relationship can be a really vital one in terms of kind of bringing them access to opportunities to progress in life. So we do a lot of stuff. We deliver programs and we train youth workers to deliver all sorts of different life skills programs in their settings. We do a lot of policy work and we try and influence government to prioritise young people and give young people a voice. We have a youth voice panel, so kind of advisory group that help us to kind of keep youth voice at the heart of what we're doing. And yeah, kind of a whole lot of other host of stuff along the way, but all about really upskilling the sector, getting kind of funding flowing in what's been a sector that's been really, really hard hit by cuts over the last decade. So really all about kind of amplifying those voices and making sure that people in power are sharing that power with young people.
Because like we said earlier, I had the immense pleasure of working with you a few years ago, and I know the incredible work that you do with the youth, sorry. And I find it so incredibly inspirational, like you said, especially with the cuts I've gone over the last sort of decade, that you're trying to help the youth get to that next level in their life. So I'd like to say, take the time to say thank you for all the incredible work that you're doing with the youth. Thank you. Keep up the amazing work.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for being a part of it and being a supporter.
Yeah.
We absolutely, that's what we need, right? Is more
Yeah,
advocates for young
of
people.
course. Yeah, definitely. And what kind of age limit do you work? Not age limit, but what's the age gap that you work with mainly?
Well, as I said, because we work with thousands of youth organisations across the movement, it's really quite broad. I mean, we've put a kind of rough bracket. It tends to be kind of from 8 to 25, the majority of the kind of services. And some of the programmes we do might be kind of more targeted than that. We might be working particularly with kind of 16 to 21-year-olds, or if, you know, depending on the kind of the appropriateness of the activity, but it's quite wide ranging, and even some of our organisations go up to 30 now, because there's often a bit of a drop off of support at 25, and that often there's still support needed, so it's quite broad.
Yeah, 'cause I wanted to ask actually if you had the idea of expanding your age limit actually, because like you said, after 25, 26 sometimes as well, it does drop off, doesn't it, a lot?
Yeah.
And there are, like, as you know as well, there are a lot of people after that age who still got fantastic ideas and that work ethic, and it seems like after 25 it kind of just drops off, doesn't it? There's not always as much help. But yeah, so go on.
Absolutely, yeah, no, and unfortunately it's often tied to funding, and you know, whether that's statutory funding and the kind of youth services saying, okay, we'll only fund kind of 11 to 16 or whatever that might be in a local authority, for example, or if it's another kind of funder coming in and saying, well, this can be, you know, kind of for this group, and that often dictates then what opportunities are available. And so I think we, you know, as a national charity, we really feel a responsibility to kind of influence that and to really question why those age limits are there. And often people on the ground working with these young people will say that that's just an arbitrary cut-off. We need to be providing support, you know, every stage in a young person's life, and giving them the next pathway, the next thing, kind of irrespective of their age.
Of course. And how long has UK Youth been around for now?
We've been around a long time, actually, about 105 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's been through kind of a whole lot of different guises in that time, from being kind of the Association of Girls Clubs, and, you know, kind of a number of different names actually over the years, but it's obviously always had young people at its heart, and supporting, engaging with young people in non-formal settings as well. So that's, I suppose, kind of been the thread.
Brilliant. And you're obviously head of business development, aren't you, yourself, which is always incredible. And what kind of things are included in your role as head of business development?
Sure, yeah. So I suppose my function in the charity is about looking at what we're trying to achieve, and then matching that to the different types of kind of funding and activity that we can develop to achieve that goal. So quite often, a lot of my work will focus around the programs, so designing and developing new programs. So just to give you a bit of a flavour, we've got programs from that tackle female empowerment, to financial capability, how to manage your money, to mental health and well-being, to like road safety, and, you know, kind of really niche things, but all kind of different types of life skills, and often things that won't be covered in the national curriculum. So yeah, particularly things like how to manage your money, which a lot of young people feel like they'll leave school and not necessarily have those skills. So I'll look at kind of understanding what the need is, what the gaps are, what young people are asking for. You know, right now, that's a lot of things around youth unemployment. So it's a lot of people asking for that, and a mental health crisis in the wake of COVID. So we are, you know, kind of particularly looking pots of funding and different, whether that's corporates or government or trusts and foundations who want to fund work with young people in this space, and we'll kind of co-develop then a program or a kind of work stream of support that we can then deliver and kind of get out to the various youth organisations in our network.
Amazing. And you mentioned obviously COVID there as well. How has that affected you as a whole within UK youth? Has it kind of affected you quite badly?
I mean, yeah, I think it's been tough for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and I think just I guess the first thing was just kind of hitting without much warning, and so nobody really had prepared for this, right? And so, the first thing was really ensuring kind of the financial stability of the charity, because quite a lot of our funding is tied to delivery. So if we couldn't deliver the programs that support young people kind of face to face, if that couldn't happen, then potentially that kind of funding was at risk. And so we needed to do some work kind of with our current partners to look at kind of how to use that funding, and then to go out for more funding from a number of the kind of emergency funds that were set up. So yeah, I'm pleased to say we're kind of through that first kind of shaky bit now. And then I think it's been, as we touched on really at the beginning, all the other different ways, people working from home, haven't seen our colleagues for 6 months, trying to keep kind of motivation, trying to keep focused, and as a national charity supporting young people and being there for young people, we've had to obviously respond to the varying and evolving needs of young people during this time. So we've put on a series of events. We did a Reimagine the Future kind of series of events for young people, covering things like financial security, employability, racial justice, really trying to kind of listen to what young people really care about at the moment and respond to that and give them a voice and show them that somebody's listening as well. So
100%.
It's very fast paced.
Yeah, I can imagine, because obviously I know how many, like you mentioned earlier, about how many thousands of people you work with as well, especially with the millions as well over the years. How kind of difficult is it to work with so many people and to make sure that everyone gets what they need in order to move forward in life?
Yeah, that's a big question. Yeah, it's very difficult. I suppose for UK youth, one of the main sort of mechanisms that we do that through is by having this movement, this network. So we have two strands to that. We have about 200 or so innovators who are these youth organisations that will work closely with us on policy and kind of influencing strategy for the sector. So a smaller group initially of kind of quite influential organisations that helps us kind of focus and work together, and then together with those 200 organisations, we then kind of reach the larger numbers underneath, and look at kind of really good ways of again, it's kind of mechanisms for listening and to disseminate information down. So I think it's about kind of networks, and obviously kind of a lot of good communications. We've got to be very, very vocal on social media, be out there, be kind of loud, and making sure that kind of people can hear us. We've obviously got a number, we're there for young people, but a lot of our messaging needs to speak to governments, needs to speak to organisations and local authorities and all the rest of it. So we have to kind of really make sure that we're making a lot of noise, that I think the strength of the network is in having lots and lots of local organisations that know their local context better than we do. We wouldn't profess to know that as a national charity and centralise everything. That just wouldn't make any sense. So we kind of have to be able to set up models where we can trust and kind of get funding out and get people to kind of do their thing in their local area, and then if we can listen back and see what works, and then kind of produce more of that, I guess, as a cycle. That's what we try and do, but it requires a lot of data, if I'm honest.
Yeah,
like that's
I
what
can
we're
imagine.
trying to get about now is kind of the more we can collect in terms of data, the more we know who's out there, what services there are for young people, the better we can kind of understand where the gaps are, really.
Of course. And obviously for someone like myself as well, I know how difficult it is to get sort of funding for different things. And that's why I admire you so much, because it's not just one or two different businesses or things that you're working on. You're literally working with thousands of people, and that's why I always wondered how you kind of cope with being kind of overwhelmed with working with so many people. And like you said, you work with kind of 200 innovators. You said that help kind of like websites, different things. And are they all youth based as well, or do they kind of work with other people as well? These innovators.
Yeah, it's there's a real range. So some of them are, I guess, what was kind of more traditionally the regional youth associations. So people like London Youth or Young Gloucestershire, where there's like a regional kind of lead. And then others might not actually be a youth organisation as we think about it. It might be somebody like the British Red Cross, where young people are a really important part of what they do, but they also do a lot of other stuff, as we know, and are a massive charity, much bigger than UK Youth. So, but they've got an interest in working with us, particularly on kind of the young people's strand of what they do. So yeah, for me, it's just all about partnerships. It's about understanding what different people bring to the table. We've got within our innovators section not just kind of voluntary and charities as well, but also some of our corporate partners, where they bring that business perspective and they want to learn more about being a great employer for young people and helping social mobility. And so it's, I think, about bringing people together who bring a perspective, to challenge our thinking, to bring more kind of neurodiversity into the room, and to help us to just think differently for young people and with young people.
Amazing. And do you tend to specialize in a certain area, like for instance, like music or sports, or is it just like a very broad spectrum of things that you work on?
Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of the forever challenge and conversation I think we have at UK Youth, because we are so wide-reaching and we're there for young people, and we're not a sort of single issue-based charity. So we're not just there for mental health, we're not just there for the arts. And I would say that our real aim is that there is a broad range of services and opportunities for young people everywhere. And so that really means that we need to not limit ourselves by one particular area. So, we might have a youth organisation in Slough that is brilliant at offering sport for young people, and the youth workers do lots of sports, and that's great, and young people know they can go there for sports, but they might never have offered the arts or music. And so actually, if by being part of UK Youth and working with us, we can train some of their youth workers to offer a music and creative arts programme, then actually we're building the capacity, and those young people in Slough can now not just have access to the sports club they were getting, but they could also have a music project. And so that kind of diversifying what the provision is for young people is absolutely what we're about. So the more that we can do that, whilst also obviously keeping some expertise, and there needs to be, we can't be experts in everything, so that's why we have to bring in experts, and that's why we started working with you, right, that we need to kind of bring in people from different industries, so that they can get that expertise.
Of course. And well, first of all, thank you for that, by the way. Kind of in your years of working there, have you kind of seen any kinds of increases in certain fields? Because you mentioned mental health a couple of times today. Have you, like for instance, mental health help? Have you seen an increase in people trying to help with mental health and any other fields?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, certainly I've worked for UK for sort of 4 years now, and absolutely mental health is one that's been on the increase. I think we're doing better as a society in talking about it, and that's a really good first step, is that we can get people to acknowledge that this is not something that should be stigmatized or can't be talked about, and that we need to be actively working to bring those conversations and to kind of normalize them. And we are, that there's a huge amount of inequality in mental health access. And, I think certainly the pandemic and the current situation has really enabled us to see that, and see that in a really stark way, and this situation that we're living through is very traumatizing, and we expect there to be trauma that not just young people, but a lot of people in general are experiencing, and so we need to have good support services in communities, and that can be specific mental health support, but that could also be upskilling teachers, youth workers, other trusted adults in young people's lives to be able to understand how to respond and have good conversations around mental health. So I think that's a huge one. And I think, others obviously kind of on the rise, thinking about technology is obviously kind of a huge thing. So the digital age, this digital by default world is something we need to kind of work with young people on, with how they understand what skills they're going to need for the future, what future jobs are going to look like, how they're going to access and kind of interface with the world, and that really that obviously involves technology. And there's a lot of fear, I think, around the whole kind of digital world, often with the adults supporting young people. It's not often not fear coming from the young people. It's often the next generation up. So I think when you've got a lot of kind of knitting together to do in the generations around kind of how we think about technology going forward. And I think the other one, I mean, there are many, but it's of course the environment and climate change. And we're seeing such an uprising, such a movement from young people saying that we need to be doing more about this. We need to be treating this as an emergency, and we need decision makers to listen. It's ultimately it's young people's future, right? That's what we're
definitely.
With. And so for me, it's just the more we can listen and work with young people rather than kind of for them, or not considering them at all in decisions, which I think sadly is too often what happens.
Yeah. And you mentioned the digital world there as well, which obviously, as we both know, moves so quickly, doesn't it? Such a rapid pace. How have you been able to kind of keep up to date with what's been happening in the digital world within UK youth? Has it been quite a sort of easy transition to work with, or has it been quite a difficult thing to work with?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I think the charity sector in general, is always going to be a bit behind. We just don't have access to the same resources as as the kind of corporate world, in terms of whether that's just our devices, our systems, and the training that comes along with that. So I think there's definitely a gap, and when we work with our corporate partners and go into their offices and see the sorts of things that they're set up, you can feel that. But I think it's about attitude, and I think that our trustees and our senior management team are really committed to kind of to the need to keep up with digital, and also the opportunity that it provides. I mentioned earlier, you asked about kind of how we manage these thousands of organisations. We can only really do that if we know where they are. We've got kind of good contact details about them. We can kind of get information out to them, and that requires good systems. So I think we know we're not quite there yet. We I think when lockdown hit, we realised we were much better set up than others. We all had laptops already. We could, we were set up on Microsoft Teams. We could work, pretty seamlessly actually from home. So I think we realised then we're definitely better than others. I think we, as the national charity as well, we need to be kind of leading the way with that. And we know that a lot of the organisations in our network, particularly those frontline delivery organisations that running youth clubs, won't necessarily have prioritised their digital provision and their kind of so we also have a responsibility to them to kind of to give guidance. We've seen a lot of youth clubs move to digital offerings obviously during this time, and digital youth clubs, and using that space. There's obviously loads of potential. We've seen some young people who weren't engaging face to face actually now engage with offering. But there's of course safeguarding concerns, and we need to make sure that those spaces are well held, and that young people have got somewhere to go if there are any safeguarding concerns. So there's a lot to it, and it's not easy. And I think there are a lot of people who don't consider themselves kind of digital specialists, having to now navigate all this stuff. And I think we, again, in terms of thinking about expertise and partnerships, we look to the tech sector. You know, we've got a partnership with Microsoft. We also work with Google and others to try and get, you know, that expertise and those systems in the hands of people who are trying to do good in their communities. And I think it's absolutely about creating more of those links.
Amazing. That is so good. With Microsoft and Google as well, that is incredible. And do you think
Yeah.
because as you said earlier, obviously UK Youth is a leading national charity, and does that kind of open more doors for you in terms of being able to work with like really good people like Google and Microsoft, or does it still make things a lot harder in terms of, I think, getting things like funding for things and so forth?
Mhm.
That makes any kind of sense?
Yeah, you know, I think there's I suppose, yeah, we're in a good position. In I think the biggest kind of asset that we have, I suppose, is that we're able to reach, you know, about, at the last count, around 1.6 million young people through
Wow.
these organisations, and that the majority of those young people are experiencing some sort of disadvantage in their lives. So, you know, often when we think about programs and support that goes out to young people, a lot of that can be channeled through schools, and that's maybe the most obvious route, is saying, okay, if we want to get to young people, we need to go through schools, and that definitely has its place. But as we know, schools are also being asked to do an awful lot, right? And teachers kind of remits just seem to be getting wider and wider, and clearly not everything can go through schools, and that just wouldn't be right. There's really clearly a place for community settings, for relationships, like I say, like the youth worker and young person relationship, which can be so powerful because they're not a teacher young person relationship. And so I think our strength is in being able to reach those young people, and like I said, that kind of national reach but local impact and local approach. So I think that's what makes us attractive to funders and to kind of more of the corporate partners as well, because we know that they can struggle to reach those communities. And I think it is about understanding the roots in, and particularly when we think about kind of the digital side of things, you know, they could create a great product, something that could really help communities, but sometimes there's a bit of an assumption of, well, we'll build it and they'll come.
Yeah.
And actually, I think through our experience, we know that we just need to start with where young people are, and who they're engaging with, and who's got their ear, who can kind of influence them and yeah, kind of work with them. And then we need to build back from there. So I think that's often what we bring to a partnership when we work with yeah, some of these corporates is that kind of knowledge.
Amazing. That is incredible. And obviously, go back to what we said earlier about your position as head of business development. Has that always been your position, or did you kind of work in other fields leading up to this moment within UK Youth?
Yes, actually, when I started off, I worked in our program delivery team. So I was, yeah, kind of program manager and then head of programs. And that was, yeah, when we partnered. So starting off with the big music project was the project that I yeah, when I first joined UK Youth, took over, which was an absolute dream to manage. So I began really by working in delivery and the sort of project management side of things. So working whether that was training youth workers or bringing on different partners, and obviously working directly with young people at our events. And then I kind of moved into, after about sort of 3 years of program delivery, decided, yeah, that it would be interesting to work on, I guess, the other side, the stage before of developing the idea and kind of thinking about the funding we could access. And now when I've kind of done that phase, I then pass it over to the program delivery team to deliver. But I do miss a bit of delivery sometimes.
No, I can imagine.
It's where a lot of the fun happens.
What kind of things inspire you every day to do what you do? Has it always been of interest to you to work with youth, or is it like a spur of the moment thing that just happened?
Yeah, no, young people have always been my thread, actually. So even, you know, kind of when I was a student, I went out to South America and I trained as an English language teacher and taught English in a number of different settings out there. And that was my first kind of, yeah, so I guess I must have been about 19. started off, kind of in classrooms, and I love working with young people, but I also really love the learning kind of environment and thinking about how people learn best. And I've kind of worked in a number of different educational settings before UK Youth, from sort of private tutoring and kind of working with parents and schools and kind of extra support for young people who need it, through to kind of facilitating and coaching and training those that are supporting young people. And so kind of, educational settings have always been really interesting to me. And I think, like I was saying with UK Youth, we kind of think about the place and the kind of power of non-formal settings and non-classroom settings. And I think there's just so much potential in those spaces where things can be more led by the young person than kind of a sort of structured top-down approach. And I think when you do that, and again, when you share power with young people and work kind of in where they want to be and kind of at their pace, then we get to learn a lot more from young people.
Yeah.
I think if we set a curriculum and say, this is what we're doing, okay, we're just going to put it on you and you need to do it, then we're really literally limiting them to whatever the curriculum or the kind of parameters are. Whereas if we say, okay, cool, this is an equal relationship, like what would you like to do? Where would you like to take this project or this residential or whatever it might be? Then we get to learn in it too. We get to really see things through young people's eyes. We get to see things differently, and I think that then young people also feel empowered to to understand they can lead their own lives. They don't need to kind of have things necessarily sort of put on them. I think we've kind of got a bit lost along the way with the education system of how we view that, and I just genuinely believe that every young person has all that potential in them.
They do.
And our job is to bring it out rather than to put things onto them.
Yeah, of course. I know exactly how you feel, because me being a teacher as well, I know exactly what it's like to work with the youth, and as you see them just grow in their personality. They can either start off really shy and quiet and then grow into this amazing, confident person who knows exactly what they want. And how does that kind of make you feel when you see the people that you work with, the youth that you work with, going from maybe not talking much or not doing much, and then growing into this really confident person who knows exactly what they want and they're working towards exactly what they want? How does that make you feel?
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing. There's
Yeah.
nothing like it really, that transformation. And I think that it's so important for us to gather those stories as well, and to really hear from young people about what it is that's been transformational for them about it. So if they can recognise that their confidence has improved because of a particular experience, or because of a relationship or a project that they've nurtured or worked on, I think it's for me, it's one thing me observing that growth and change in a young person, but it's another thing for the young person themselves to be able to recognise it.
Yeah.
And I think as that takes a bit longer, right, you might not actually see it. They might have gone on, and it's a couple of years later that they go, oh my god, that person or that project I was part of, that changed me. And we can't always neatly know at the time that we have a survey in front of us, right, whether that that thing has changed. And so I think it's a hard thing to measure, and I think if we can kind of keep hold almost of like our relationships with young people, and we can see it often kind of come to fruition in future years. But it's
100%. I kind of wanted to add to that as well and ask sort of what have been some of the highlights of your career so far that you've worked in your time with work with the youth.
Oh, it's a hard question. There are so many. I mean, it's not just because I'm talking to you, but I would say that the big music project, perhaps because it was the first project that I worked on with UK Youth, it was just such an amazing project. It was multi-year, so we had like loads of time to kind of learn and iterate and improve. For those that don't know, this was all about kind of breaking the barriers of the music and creative industries for young people. So they had the opportunity to lead their own music projects in groups in their communities, and they received training and links to industry. And then we would do kind of big events like the one at the Ministry of Sound that we did to showcase not only the young talent, and that was part of it, it was to see young people who had talent to share and give that platform, but also just any young person, whether they were a performer or not, to see the value of music and creating together. And there were just some amazing moments in that. I can remember at one of the showcases we had a fiddle player from Scotland in a corridor with a grime artist from Hackney.
Really?
And they were collaborating and doing this kind of amazing mashup. And yeah, just seeing those moments of like, wow, anybody can jam with anybody.
Yeah, of course.
Just such a connector. And I just don't know whether those two young people ever would have spoken if they'd been at an event that was not kind of a music event. They were clearly very different from different worlds, but it was their love of music and very different styles of music even that connected them. And so I think, yeah, that was a real highlight for me. It's just
amazing.
People kind of come together.
It's amazing, because it's so true with what you said about these two different worlds coming together, because that's exactly why we started the Hip Hop Orchestra. Because when I first initially started it, people thinking hip hop and classical, how are you doing that? I love the idea, but how's that going to work? I was like, trust me, it's going to work. And when he finally performed, even like a perfect example again is that Ministry of Sound, where it started off with like a beautiful string section with the singers and a piano as well and the bass, and then suddenly the hip hop beats dropped in, and everyone went, "Oh wow, that's amazing!" And it's kind of those sort of reactions that I love, and it's such an amazing feeling. And it's kind of the events that you put on as well, like you said, where they may not have met before if it wasn't for what you put on as well, which is, I have to say again, thank you for doing such an amazing thing. And talk about Ministry of Sound. Was it very difficult to hire out the Ministry of Sound at the time? Because obviously such a legendary venue. Was it quite difficult to organise an event there?
They were actually very very kind of welcoming. I mean, it's a weird thing when you try and do a youth event in what is also a club.
Yes.
So I remember us actually, they have a community team, so they were great at kind of understanding our event. But I think we had the event on a Sunday, and so there had been people in the club until like 3 a.m. on the Saturday night, so there were still people cleaning up from that in the morning. So a bit of a weird kind of but I think we really knew, we had a youth board on that project, advising us and kind of co-creating the event with us, and they felt really that the prestige of that name of the event was going to be something that would really pull young people there. And particularly, if we're asking young people to travel and come to an event on a Sunday, it's just not going to be as exciting if it's in a town hall, So I think it was really about kind of using that, harnessing the brand, and I think Ministry of Sound were really up for that as well, and gave us little details like the kind of boards they have. What are they called? Like this ones of the cinema boards you get. Say the gig who's headlining that night. We had that with the big music project and with UK Youth, and so there's little differences that really make young people feel valued, feel like, I'm worth this. And it's those moments, right? Those prestigious kind of venues, I think they sort of speak to young people. They kind of give you a sense of like, I can do this, right? I can part of this. This isn't a whole industry that's a part, something that's completely separate from me that I can't access. And that's, I think, really what we're trying to do is say, this is as much for you to access. And that's why we're also bringing in artists of all varieties. And we had capital DJs, because the project was in partnership with Global. So we had capital DJs, which again was amazing. And all sorts of different artists from different genres to kind of just spark that for young people to say, like, I can see myself here.
Yeah, 100%. And it was such a good event, though. Such a good day as well. It's a memory. It's still one of my favorite events I've ever done. That is so
Oh,
good. So thank you again. But before we go, though, actually, I'd love to find out from every guest that I have on here is the best lessons that you learned in your time since working on these projects.
mm. Oh, good questions, Georgia. You've got
Yeah.
to got to dig deep for these. What are some lessons? Okay, I think number one lesson for me is about co-creating with young people. Well, and obviously for me that's with young people, but I think it's with whoever you're trying to help or support.
Mhm.
I think far too many projects, services, government initiatives get written maybe with good intentions, but without ever really asking the people that they affect. And it's a principle we're really committed to at UK Youth, and we know we could still be doing better. You can always be doing this stuff better, right? Of asking young people just all the time, if we're making a decision and we're saying, oh, should we prioritize this, or how should this project look, or whatever, however small, like what age group it should be, the thing we always need to be saying is, well, what do young people think? Let's ask young people. And not in just a tokenistic, oh yeah, we did a survey or we've done it, but genuinely getting them involved in the fabric of what we do. I think, that's just been a huge lesson for me, is making that kind of front and center. And then I think the other is absolutely about the power of partnerships. We couldn't do anything at UK Youth without our partners. We literally wouldn't exist without them, right? Our strength is in those partnerships, is in being able to understand like what we bring to the table, what we can do uniquely, which is that kind of like national viewpoint and position and influence, but understanding that we can't do everything. We're not the people on the ground, we're not the people delivering locally, and that we need to be in equal partnership with them. We need to be really innovative and creative about how we view partnerships, and it's not always easy, right? Because you're going to have people with different agendas, perhaps bring slightly different things to the table, and there's going to be tension there, and there's going to be things that you need to work out. But I think the payoff is it's just so worth it. And I think we all grow when we and we're so cliche, right? But when we all work together. For me, those are kind of two big lessons that I've got from this job and the last few years.
Incredible. But once again, I want to say thank you so much for being part of the podcast today. It's really lovely to catch up with you again.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. How can people find you?
So follow UK Youth on kind of all the channels, on Twitter and mainly on Twitter and LinkedIn. But I'm also at Christina_UKY on Twitter as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Christina. Love to catch up again. Take care.
Take care. Cheers.
Take care, everyone.